I really started to realize the way to visualize, like the process of visualizing data. So one of the things I really like about this conference is you can do sessions where you're like, I'm having this problem, or I want to know this and I don't. And so let's explore it together. And so we did a session there where we explored how do I take a lot of data we've collected in the form of JSON objects from REST services we're collecting on a daily basis from other services, and I want to visualize it in Excel, and that path is not obvious. And so we sat down as a group and we actually we started working out, well, what do we want the end result to look like? And we did it wrong a couple times until we finally got it right. And then we went and we actually had to do it in programming. We did it in C#, where we started to transform the JSON objects into CVS files. And that was just one of those things where it's like, I've always wanted to do it. It never felt right or like what the right process. But again, and even though no one else in the room had done it before, together we're able to arrive at an answer. And in fact, for the data that we had, we actually transformed it and came up with charts in Excel, which is, again, just an amazing ability of, collaborating, even though nobody really knows what they're doing, together we do. Well, that's hard to say, right? I definitely feel like I walked out of the session knowing how to do it.
Were you the guy on the keyboard?
I was the guy on the keyboard. I was the guy who said, I don't know how to do this, let's explore it. I think most of the people who walked out know a lot more than when they came in, but you can never, never really put yourself in the position of someone else. It's definitely, though, one of the great things is this ability to explore and learn things, really explore things that you do not have someone telling you the answer to for. It is an example in a very nice, loose form, right? Where a lot of times with the mob programming, it's more structured and you're more rotating. But here we're just, as a group, working together on the same thing. I put my computer onto the projector, and people are Googling and showing me questions and giving suggestions, and we're just trying it. And yeah, it's really a powerful thing. And it's one of the things I love about the conference, because most conferences I go to, it's about sort of lecturing from a position of podium or power. I know how to do this, and let me show you how to do it. But here, there's an ability to truly, learn something that nobody knows and explore something that's of interest to you that you may get an answer to, and you might not get an answer, and that's okay. And you don't actually get chances to do that often. And it's really quite fun and enjoyable.
That's neat.
So the thing I want to talk about is I get to go to a lot of conferences because I'm an international speaker, right? And we go across the globe and we get to see a whole bunch of different conferences. And I love going to all these conferences and seeing them, but I go to them because the conferences bring me out there. The open spaces are the conferences that I'm not brought to, that I go to solely for myself. That I feel like this is where it's worth spending my own money to go to a conference to learn for me. Not because I want to share with other people necessarily, though it's fun to share with other people, but because I know I'm going to learn something that's really going to fuel me for the rest of the year. And that's the thing that's really special about these conferences to me is, this is the conference I want to go to for me. I don't know who's showing up. I don't know what I'm going to learn. I always think I'm going to learn something. Like I'll come and I'll be like, oh, there's this thing I really want to learn about. And I've always gone away with the most important thing not being that. Being something I really did not expect. And that I wouldn't have known to ask for. Right? And that's one of the great things about this process is, when they say prepare to be surprised, like they mean it. They mean there's something you don't realize that you need to know that you're going to find out about. So at this conference, the part that has surprised me the most was the data visualizations, learning how to get through that process. The visualization, or the visual source, yeah. The part that's been the most enjoyable to me, which is slightly different, I really just enjoyed working in the Python this morning, we did Python koans, and we sat down as a group and we learned a lot of the language there, and it was just very fun, and I love learning. That's not going to help me as much in the rest of my career, but that was just fun. And then I was talking to another attendee and sort of asking, like, what is the thing that was most valuable for her? And she was just getting started, and she said, like, I met someone who got started just a year before me. And she's like, I wouldn't have known that. And we were talking, and I mentioned I was just getting started, and she's like, oh, I just got started last year. And she's like, oh, like, if you've been able to do this much in that short amount of time, like, I can do that too, right? And so, so the surprises come from different ways. And I if I had said, you should go there because you might meet someone who will be on your path and will, that's a ridiculous statement to make. But it's those kind of things where you leave and it fuels you for the last, those things can fuel you for months or years. Other things that I've learned, not necessarily at this open space, but at the other one, so I can really kind of look back. I was introduced to koans up at an open space, and I've since written 6 or 8 koans of my own because of that. It was just a phenomenal thing to get introduced to. I had no idea it existed before that. I was introduced to a learning technique for languages called language hunting, which is just phenomenal. We do a lot of work with TeachingKids to Program, and he was taking learning farther and faster than I had seen before, and just a whole bunch of techniques that I learned out there. We did a trifecta consulting thing where I sat down, this was a year ago now, I was having a problem with one of the conferences that I run. And they said, explain your problem for 1 minute, and then you explain it to 2 people who you do not know yet. And then you turn your chair so your back is to them, and they discuss your problem for 4 minutes. So 5 minutes later, 2 people I didn't know who really don't understand my problem at all gave me 2 solutions that I just used a couple months ago when the conference ran, and they worked out beautifully. And I was like, I had been talking to these problems forever with people and not coming to a solution, and it's just, sometimes people who are really speaking from pure ignorance, come across solutions that seem obvious afterwards, that when you're too close, you just can't see. And so I've had all of these kind of experiences, and they're all just fabulous. And again, it's finding the thing I didn't know I needed to find. I'm not sure what it is about this format or the facilitation of this group that allows that stuff to surface, but it allows it to surface. In most conferences, they have a set agenda, and that's what surfaces. The unknown is very hard to surface in those areas. I do not facilitate any open spaces at conferences because how are you going to go against Diana? One of the things that's amazing about this conference is Diana Larson is, I think, the best facilitator in the world. And to have a true worldwide expert facilitate, and we have some good facilitators at this conference, and all of them easily will tip their hat to Diana. She is just world class. And it is that facilitation that allows this stuff to surface. And I don't really understand exactly how she does it, especially as a lot of stuff she does seems like she's not doing much. But she does things that allow you not to connect with her, but to connect with the other people in the room. And that's really powerful and really meaningful. And the 2 things that really make for a good open space are a good space and facilitation and good people showing up. And we have both, and that's really, really great. So one other thing I want to talk about. The first time I heard of an open space conference, I didn't go. And I didn't go because someone said, oh, you should go to this conference. And I looked at it, it was in Michigan, so I had to fly, and there was 50 people at the conference. I just thought, I'm not flying to Michigan for 50 people. And after I went to the first one, I realized, instead of flying to a conference of 1,000 people, of which there are 50 I really want to be talking to, that was an opportunity to sit down with the 50 people I wanted to be talking to and actually talk to them. And so the bigger a conference is, the less likely you are that you're going to have time to really connect with people, really get to know them, really make those personal and meaningful connections. These conferences, which are usually capped at around 100 or so, like at the end of 2 or 3 days, you at least know everybody's face, and you know most people's names, and you've built connections that are deeper and much more meaningful than just the 1,000 people that you're walking by at a conference or sitting next to, not talking to during a lecture. So that ability to actually connect and form some sort of group and connection, that's here because the conference is small, and it is because the conference is small that makes this a great conference. I think everyone here is. I mean, in the beginning, people are more nervous, but really quickly, it's surprising. Like the first time you meet someone, you're on guard. Like, who is this weird person? But you meet them 2 or 3 times, and all of a sudden, like all of that falls down, and you're like, oh yeah, I know that guy. I saw him yesterday and the day before, and now we're old friends. Sure. And that happens really quickly. And I find that these conferences are very open and very, very accepting, very friendly. So where's Agile going? So the 2 things that I see right now are pushing and pulling Agile into new. First is DevOps. So we are seeing amazing things happening in the deploying of software really rapidly. So 2 places that are really like leading the charge here. One is Facebook, right? So Facebook is creating systems that when their programmers checking code, the system actually is tracking, does this programmer usually break my build or not break my build? And I'm gonna literally treat his check-in differently. Maybe if he's really good and over the last 2 months he's been doing everything fine, I'm just gonna accept the code. And if it's not, maybe I'm gonna send it for code review. And you're starting to see really interesting stuff occur there, where the system itself is automated to react to how people are using it. And then the other place that's really noticeable is Netflix. And so Netflix has 2 things, Chaos Monkey and Chaos Gorilla, which are little programs that turn off servers. And when Amazon goes down, Netflix is usually the company that stays up. And the reason they stay up is because they've written a program. So an Amazon crash is not a unique thing for Netflix. They literally are doing hundreds every day because they wrote a program to make sure they were. So when it happens, they're like, not a problem. We react to that every day. And so you're starting to see systems that are actively inviting disaster so that when it happens, it's just not a problem. And so that DevOps is doing that. And when you can do that, you can take an idea from a thought into reality so much faster, because it doesn't matter how fast you program it. If you can't deploy it, it's not going to reality. It doesn't count until it gets deployed. And we're seeing amazing stuff happening on that area. And the other place we're seeing it, which is somewhat related but different, is Lean Startup. And what they are doing is they are measuring customer reaction in fundamentally different ways. So lots of, well, we could do this or this, let's do both, and put analytics everywhere and see who's pushing buttons and who's doing that. And so it's much less just, oh, I have this idea, so that's some visionary, I have this idea, let's do it. And much more a data informed. Now, a lot of times there's still a visionary, right? But he is informed by data. And so he can say, I had these 2 ideas and I tested them and this one is actually good. And they can get a whole bunch of feedback back at how I think sometimes that goes too far. Sometimes you take away the inspiration. So it's not just data driven, but it is definitely data informed. And that concept of how do I really rapidly push the envelope. And there's lots of things that are happening out there, but noticeably a company that's not just doing that in changing the world for them, but is doing that and changing the world for everybody, is Kickstarter, who really has come out and said, let's learn how we can see, does this idea have legs before it's even a real idea, right? And the world changed last year when earlier this year, I guess May, when the Veronica Mars project funded. And for the first time, we saw entire movies being funded, right? Like that is a quake through the industry that changed to something that was, you really needed to convince people and get permission to do these things, that now you can take it directly to your consumers and say, is this something that you guys want? And if they want it, then you can go and you can start making it. And Lean Startup does that at every level, where it's like, I have an idea. Okay, let's see if people want to push the button. Let's see if people want to purchase the product. Let's see if people want to get on a mail. Like, how can I be constantly making experiments that test the value proposition that I'm about to go on? And both of those, I think, are really pulling Agile forward. So the biggest blocker, by far the biggest blocker, is Agile takes this idea and says, let's not plan, let's react, right? And if you're going to react, that means that you can react. That means that existing software is easy to change, and that requires a level of technical excellence. And a lot of companies just are not putting in the practice and the discipline, and a lot of times it's discipline, to have that technical excellence. And without that, it becomes really, really hard, because if you cannot react, if you cannot turn sharply or create new things quickly or change your code, then you better get it right the first time. And throwing away the planning when you can't react is dangerous, you know. And so, but it's easy to throw away your plans. It's only powerful to throw them away when you can react. And so by skipping that step of technical excellence, that's where a lot of places are failing. There's that, and that part's true, you don't, but you need to lay the groundwork of clean code. You need the well-tested code. You know, being able to deploy, so when we were talking earlier with DevOps, you're now seeing a lot of companies that they deploy somewhere in the neighborhood of 20 times a day, right? If you're deploying 20 times a day, that's a nice, easy, automated process, right? That is not, some people go off overnight and do it. You don't have 20 nights to deploy in a day, right? That has to be an automated process. And so if you want to talk about deploying rapidly to adjust, but you have a manual thing that is 2 weeks of going to QA, and then we're going to build this and put it overnight while we turn down servers. I mean, I still see internet companies where they're like, service will be out over the weekend when we upgrade. And I'm like, what is wrong with you? Like, when was the last time Facebook went down for an upgrade? They release hundreds of times, like hundreds of times in a week. I mean, like, they're releasing constantly. They can test it in production. They actually do a layered launch where it goes to like 1,000 servers, and then if everything goes well, it goes to another 10,000, and then it grows up, right? So that you can do things and you don't have to worry about mistakes. And they have rules for, like, if you're doing certain types of changes, you have to be online at times. But they've worked that part of the process in. And then you take other companies that are still going through, I have a 2-week QA cycle, and then we're going to build this, and then we're going to hand deploy it, and say, all these things you're doing over here that make it work, like, let's try here. I think of it like a potter or a sculptor who's working in marble, right? And if you're working in marble, there are limitations to it. And so this person comes with clay and says, hey, I have all these great things I can do to make my clay pots quicker, so let's make the vase, and then I'll add a handle. And the marble person's like, I made the vase, but adding the handle is now a problem. like you work differently in clay because it's a different medium, and the skills that you learn that make you productive there do not necessarily transfer unless you've got a malleable substance. And the code is the substance, and a lot of times people go to, okay, let's use all these powerful ideas, but without doing the technical side to make the material they're working with malleable. And that's where disaster starts to strike. And what will happen is you'll find a company that's like, well, I have 1,000 programmers. let's get them all to Agile now. And the problem with that is that you can't move that much technical debt that quickly. You need to sort of grow. Let's get a pocket of it working well. Let's get another pocket. Let's get it so that the technical excellence is there and working as the cultural shift is going as well. It's hard for people to change that quickly, but it's impossible for them to change if they're not backed with the solid discipline and solid techniques. Otherwise, they need that technical excellence.
Gotta have technical excellence.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then you need mind shifts on how you now design stuff.
Oh, another layer.
Yeah, and that's right, because now that you're working with this new medium, you need to learn new ways of working with it. But you can't just switch your new ways and use the old medium. This idea, like if you buy this new tool or you adopt this new methodology, everything just is there for free. Right. That's never the case. There's always an adjustment. You have to learn the new things, and you can't learn them first. You can't adjust your techniques before you have the new technology, and you can't if you don't have the new technology, so you can't adjust your techniques if you don't have the new technology. And the new technology without adjusting your techniques also leaves you fairly ineffective. And this is common. I mean, we even see it in architecture where as new materials come in, the first buildings that are made are the old buildings with the new material. They're not yet realizing, how do I use this new material? Yeah, I really like that. And this is a good spot to really, you can do a session that isn't very whiz-bang and gets into deep technical, and maybe you're only learning a couple things, but they're valuable things for you to take those steps. And you don't have to worry about, I have 100 people in the room that they all have to be entertained and go away thinking it's great. You just, hey, there's 4 of us and we're happy because we learned something. That's another thing. In the beginning, I thought bigger sessions are the better sessions, but that is not the case for me. And most of the time I found that it's the small sessions that I'm really gaining a lot of value out of. That was fantastic. That was our Python koans, and that's where we learned Python. And it was fantastic. We learned an amazing amount. And it went like that. We sat down. We started going through the lessons. I think we got through 3 files of lessons out of 40, and I could have easily sat and kept going, but I really had other sessions I wanted to see.